If arresting journalists is dictatorship now, what was January 6th?
Remember, we fight for what's right because it's time to go right.
If arresting journalists is dictatorship now, what was January 6th? What was the silence when the cameras were rolling and the Constitution felt optional? The First Amendment doesn't pick sides, doesn't check badges, doesn't ask who you voted for. Press freedom for all, or freedom for none. Welcome to Go Right with Peter Boykin, the constitutionalist for liberty! GoRightNews.com! PeterBoykin.com! It is time to go right!
If arresting journalists is dictatorship now, what was January 6th? This is #GoRight with Peter Boykin. When the press discovers the First Amendment only after it's convenient. So recently, a TMZ commentator framed the alleged arrest of Don Lemon as proof of an emerging dictatorship, which involved dramatic language, historical fear, and constitutional alarm bells. And according to his narrative, the arrest of a journalist for covering a protest is inherently authoritarian and marks a collapse of democracy itself. If you want to listen to that video, you can find our article on GoRightNews.com where I have a link to his video. But that argument collapses under even mild scrutiny. For years, Americans were told that arrests tied to protest activity were justified, even necessary, when those arrested were politically unfashionable. Journalists, live streamers, independent reporters, and citizen media figures who covered unrest during the January 6th Capitol breach were arrested, detained, charged, or financially destroyed. And many were not embedded with violence. Many were not participants. Many were clearly documenting events. So we ask, where was TMZ then? Where was this sudden reverence for the First Amendment when journalists were labeled insurrectionists simply for being present? When credentials were ignored? When due process was slow-walked? When pretrial detention became punishment? The Constitution does not activate based on political branding. The First Amendment does not belong to legacy media alone. It protects speech, press assembly, and petition for everyone, or it protects no one. The TMZ argument rests on a selective definition of journalism. CNN credentials are treated as sacred, while independent journalists are treated as disposable. That is not constitutional reasoning. That is guild protection. The claim that a church is always open public property is legally false. A church may invite the public, but it remains private property unless explicit permission is granted. The law hinges on consent, not vibes. And journalists do not gain immunity by carrying a camera. More importantly, the claim that a grand jury indictment proves authoritarian intent ignores how grand juries work. They are prosecutorial tools, not adversarial courts. That reality was ignored when the same system was used against political opponents of the media class. Now it is suddenly outrageous. This is not a defense of arresting journalists. It is a demand for consistency. If arresting journalists is wrong, it was wrong before. If it was a threat to liberty now, it was a threat then. A constitutionalist does not defend freedom selectively. Freedom either applies universally or it becomes propaganda. So from Capitol Hill to county courthouses, this is why North Carolina and many other states should be paying attention. National media frames constitutional crises as abstract. In reality, they filter down into states, counties, and local law enforcement practices. And North Carolina and many other states are not immune to this. In recent years, North Carolina has seen expanded coordination between state authorities and federal agencies during protests, political demonstrations, and public events. While most interactions remain lawful, the precedent set at the federal level shapes local behavior. If journalists are defined narrowly by corporate affiliation, then independent media in North Carolina is at risk. If presence near protest activity is treated as participation, then live streamers in Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, and Alamance County face potential criminal exposure for documentation alone. Local churches, community centers, and private venues routinely host political events. Property rights still apply. Consent still matters. Law enforcement must balance First Amendment protections with trespass law, but the standard must be neutral. What North Carolina must resist is politicized enforcement. When rules are bent for one group and rigidly enforced against another, trust collapses. When prosecutors chase narratives instead of evidence, communities fracture. The Constitution was designed to decentralize power for a reason. States act as fire breaks against federal overreach. Local officials must ask hard questions before mirroring national excesses. Is the person being arrested a journalist or merely labeled one? Was consent given? Was due process respected? Would the same standard apply if the ideology were reversed? If North Carolina fails to ask these questions now, it will not matter who sits in Washington later. The precedent will already be set. So we ask, and we state, the Constitution does not belong to the media class. They want you scared. They want you emotional. They want you to believe that the Constitution only breaks when their people are touched. The TMZ talking heads waves the First Amendment like a panic button, warning of dictatorship, invoking history, even dragging Neville Chamberlain into the frame. But where was this sermon when Americans were arrested for filming January 6th? Where was it? Where was this outrage when independent journalists were raided, charged, smeared, and financially erased? The constitutionalist answer is simple. Rights do not activate based on press badges. The First Amendment does not belong to Donald Trump, CNN, TMZ, or the Department of Justice. It belongs to the people. If arresting journalists is wrong, it is always wrong. If due process matters, it always matters. If grand juries are flawed tools, they did not suddenly become flawed yesterday. What we're watching is not the death of democracy, it is the exposure of hypocrisy. A free press is essential, yes. But a free press includes citizens with phones, independent reporters, live streamers, and voices outside corporate studios. Liberty does not flow from legacy media approval. A constitutionalist for liberty does not cheer arrests, but he also does not rewrite history to protect favored players. The warning signs were there long before TMZ noticed. And the question is not whether we saw it coming. The question is whether we will finally apply the Constitution evenly. That is what it means to go right. Folks, this is hashtag Go Right with Peter Boykin. I'm Peter Boykin. You can check out more articles, including this one, at GoRightNews.com, GoRightNC.com, and PeterBoykin.com.
On the floor, beat filtered some energy! Screaming loud again. Truth depends on who's your friend. Same rules but a different spin. History erased with a new